Hey there, friends. So this is the last step in the mixing triptych of doing this Michael Brauer technique on this free improvisation record that I'm producing for three people that I know and care about very much here in London. Nathan Moore, who's also my bandmate in the London Experimental Ensemble, was one of the guitarists on this project with Ray Russell, very famous session musician from London for the last 50 years, and Eddie Prevost, who's been playing drums professionally here for over 60 years. Incredible. They made this record, and I was honored to be part of it. Nathan came by yesterday because he wanted to do some fine tuning and volume rides. He was fine with the first mix I sent him, which you heard. He was fine with the second mix that I improved, which you also heard. But there was something that I was not hearing that was making me feel like, even though they were all happy with it, I was not. Part of the role of a producer is seeing and hearing the end of the project before anybody else does. Know where it's going before they do, including the artist sometimes. And I heard and saw where it should be going, and it just wasn't quite there. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was something about a perspective that I wasn't feeling it. It wasn't EQ. The instruments sounded fine. It wasn't levels. The relationships were fine. It was just a perspective thing. I got the depth and the width from the last video that you saw. That was great. I was happy with that. And that, thanks to Bob Olson, my mentor, for giving me some feedback to making that better. But there was just something, I don't know, just something wasn't sitting right. And then I said to myself, well, what is it? What exactly is not, giving me the chills right now? And when I really sat back for a few minutes and thought about it, it wasn't the tone, it wasn't the dynamic, it wasn't the relationships. So something was overwhelming something. Remember, production is about taking away, not adding most of the time. So I was like, what can I take away that will improve this, but not diminish it in any way? And I realized by careful thought and contemplation and careful listening, critical listening, that some of the drums, as awesome as they sounded, were taking away from the full picture. They were overwhelming some of the delicacies of the picture. Okay, so that's a good step right there. Now we're starting to identify an issue. Were there other issues? Maybe, maybe not. But as soon as I figured that out, the challenge was to make that picture clearer. It's probably the best way to put this, without taking anything away, without ruining the tone of that picture. So I decided to go to something I rarely use, but can be very, very efficient in production, especially mixing: gates. We're not talking Phil Collins gates here. We're talking judicious, careful use of gates on some of the drums. And I say some because what I discovered by soloing and muting is that 80% of the drum sound that was making me feel good were the overheads, the rooms, and the distant drum kit mic. It wasn't like normally we put a mic about 4 feet away, 4 feet up, and it captures the whole kit. This was just above where the kick drum sat, the roundness of the kick drum. So if this is the top of the kick drum, it was probably this much higher and 3 feet back. The overheads, the room and that were capturing 80% of it. And that was really good in a rock record or an alternative, indie record. That would be probably all you'd need, and you could turn everything else off. But Eddie Prevost is an excellent, amazing, technical, and precise drummer. And he likes to hear everything for good reason because he doesn't slam the drums. That's another lesson for you all, right? If you want to know what makes a studio drummer better than everyone else, they don't wail on their drums. They don't wail on their cymbals. They know exactly how hard to hit. And when they dig in more, there's a purpose. And still, they're not slamming it, so they still have tone and definition. And Eddie is the king of that. Okay, so if I'm getting the most of it from the overheads, the room, and that distant kit mic, how do I use that but still get some definition? I don't want to lose the definition. I want to lose the woofiness. I want to lose the bleed. I want to lose any cloudiness, but I don't want to lose the tone and definition. Gates, my friends. So let me show you what I did. It made all the difference. When Nathan got here, he was completely blown away. He's like, because he hadn't heard this yet. I did it just like the night before he came. So the day before yesterday. And he was like, oh my God, what did you do? And I said, I just gated the drums so that anything that is not that drum being hit is out. And when that drum is hit, you're getting all the tone, all the definition, all the dynamics, and nothing else. Let's take a look how I achieved that. Okay, so way down here, these are the drum channels in question. This is the overhead, that's the room next to it. I turned off the hi-hat because we were getting plenty in the overhead, although it sounded amazing, just didn't need it. But let's start with the floor tom. With the floor tom, I pulled up this handy Oxford drum gate by Sonics. And I got this on sale last year and hadn't used it since, so I had to really learn how to use it. What you do is this is the line below which everything is gated out. So you have to take your time and listen, and it might take multiple passes to see what the dynamics are so that you cut out all the bleed and that the only thing that goes above that line is an actual low tom hit, right? So that's what's going on. All the things in yellow are actual tom hits. All the things in white, when you see them, are other things bleeding in, other hits of other drums. There's the tom hits. But anything that's not in yellow above that line will be in white below, and you can see popping up. The white ones are not the toms. That's other stuff. So imagine if you're getting rid of all those white ones, but all the yellow tom hits you're keeping, and then gating after the sustain is over. Look at that. That's all not tom hits that were bleeding into that mic. Incredible, right? So, and then you've got the rack tom. Same thing. Look at all those hits that are not rack toms. All white, yellow, there's a rack tom, yellow rack tom. But anything that's not yellow, and it took a while to dial this in to get the threshold. It's also got decay, so I can design my own decay to make sure that I don't lose the tone. And then a leveler, which determines whether the transient will be processed towards the soft or light target. You dig? And that's what retains all of the definition, but none of the BS. And then, so we did floor tom, rack tom, the snare. All of those yellow are snare hits. The ones that are in white are not snare hits. And it just made everything clean up so nicely. I mean, oh my God. It's so much better now. And then the last thing I did was the close kick. What the close kick was is Eddie wanted a mic on the side of his beater, but not on the beater, as well as having one in front of the kick. And that was cool, but it was picking up so much snare. Look, this is all kick now. This is snare. The white is snare. And it was just causing cloudiness. It was making things a little blurry and not defined. And now it's super duper defined. And I'll let you hear that a little bit. I don't know if you'll be able to tell the difference between the last video and the recording, but for us, myself and the people involved, they really could tell the difference. So let's take a look here. This will be just a little bit. I'll bounce, mix. We'll bounce it in real time. And we'll call this test. Okay, so there you have it. I don't know if you can tell versus the last mix, but it has all the tone and definition and dynamics and intensity that it had before. Nothing was taken away except things that were getting in the way. That's the whole point of producing records, taking away anything that's getting in the way. And I feel that the gating took away the things that were not helping. And now it's just so much more defined and everything sits properly. Nothing's fighting for space, but I've lost none of the power and the intensity that existed before I did this. So hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.